I never imagined silence could feel this loud. After my husband Daniel passed away last winter, the house felt like an empty shell, every corner echoing with memories I wasn't ready to face. I moved to Brook Hollow Lane, a quiet street on the edge of town, hoping a new place would soften the ache, or at least give me a chance to breathe again. But the quiet didn't last long. The first time I noticed him, I was watering the small rose plant Daniel had given me on our last anniversary. Across the street, a man stood behind his curtain, just a faint silhouette, but unmistakably there, watching. The curtain twitched the moment I looked back. At first, I brushed it off. New neighborhood, new faces. Maybe he was just curious about the new widow moving in alone. But curiosity doesn't last weeks. Every morning when I opened the blinds, there he was. Every evening when I stepped out to bring the mail, there he was again. Always hidden behind the same faded blue curtains. Always still. Always staring. I didn't know his name then, only that I had become his routine. The loneliness made it worse. I had no children, no siblings, and Daniel's family lived far away. My days were a predictable loop. Wake up, try to eat, pretend to be okay, and sleep. But slowly, something unusual filled the emptiness inside me. Fear. A kind I hadn't known before. One night, unable to sleep, I sat on the couch with a blanket around my shoulders. Outside, Brook Hollow Lane was silent. No cars, no barking dogs, not even crickets. But I felt it, that same cold stare. I walked to the window and peeked through the blinds. He was standing outside his house. Not behind the curtain, not in shadow, but directly under the streetlight, facing my home, facing me. His head tilted slightly as if studying me, unmoving, unblinking, like a statue carved out of night. My breath froze. I stepped back so fast, I nearly tripped over the table. My heart pounded against my ribs, and even though I closed all the blinds, I couldn't shake the feeling that his eyes followed me into every room. The next morning, I asked the mailman about the neighbor. "Oh, that's Mr. Grayson," he said, lowering his voice. "Keeps to himself. Doesn't talk to anyone. People avoid him." "Why?" I asked. The mailman hesitated. "Let's just say someone who watches everything isn't always watching for good reasons." My stomach twisted. I wanted to believe it was all in my lonely, grieving mind, but the signs kept piling up. I began hearing faint clicks at night, like someone snapping pictures through glass. My trash cans were found moved from their place, lids open as if someone had searched through them. Then came the worst sign. One foggy morning, when I opened my door to grab the newspaper, I froze. A Polaroid picture lay on the mat. A picture of me, taken through a window, taken while I slept on the couch. My blood turned cold. My hands shook violently. I backed into the house, locked every door, closed every blind. That was the day I stopped feeling like a widow and started feeling like prey. But fear can do strange things to a broken heart. It can drown you, or it can wake a fire you didn't know you had. And that was the moment I decided. If Mr. Grayson wanted to watch me, then I would give him something he would never forget. Fear changes the way you breathe. It changes the way you walk through your own home. Quiet, careful, like every floorboard might give away your position to someone lurking in the shadows. That's how I lived for the next few days after finding that Polaroid picture. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. Every sound felt like a warning. But the more frightened I became, the more angry I grew. I refused to die inside my own house. So I started taking notes, dates, times, patterns, anything about Mr. Grayson's watching habits. And oddly enough, something strange happened while I observed him. His routine wasn't random. It was structured. 6:15 a.m. Curtain moves. 9 a.m. Front door opens halfway. 2:30 p.m. Window glare shifts. 7 p.m. porch light flicks once, off, then on again. Every single day. No normal neighbor behaves like that. But I needed help, and the only person I trusted vaguely was Mara, my closest friend of 12 years. She lived across town, but she always supported me through Daniel's illness and afterward. When I told her everything, Mr. Grayson, the pictures, the watching, she gasped. Ella, why didn't you call me sooner? She said. You should not be dealing with this alone. I didn't want to bother you, I whispered. You're not bothering me. I'm coming over tonight, and we're going to the police. For the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. She arrived with her usual energy, a warm smile, and a bag of groceries, as if she planned to fix both my fear and my fridge. While she cooked, I explained everything again from the staring silhouette to the Polaroid. Mara paused mid-stir. Are you absolutely sure it was him? Yes, I said. Who else could it be? She looked away a moment too long, almost like she knew something. I frowned. What is it? Nothing, she said quickly. Just thinking. But her tone wasn't normal. It carried a heaviness, a hesitation I had never heard before. And then something else started bothering me. She wasn't surprised enough. Not shocked. Not terrified. Just uneasy. Ella, she said finally, maybe we shouldn't rush to blame him. Maybe there's another explanation. My neighbor's taking pictures of me while I sleep. What other explanation exists? She bit her lip. I'm just saying you've been through a lot. Losing Daniel, moving here alone. Maybe you're reading too much into this. Pain stung deeper than any fear. Mara, you think I'm imagining this? No. She sighed. I just want to be sure before you accuse someone. Her words felt like a slap. The one person I trusted, my support, was doubting me? After everything? Why are you defending him? I asked quietly. Her face paled. I'm not Ella, listen please. Before she could finish, a shadow moved outside. The silhouette. Standing on the sidewalk this time, closer than ever. I pointed. That's him. Tell me you see that. Mara stood still, her breathing shallow. But instead of shock, her expression twisted into something like recognition. Mara, you need to calm down, she whispered. Please. My heart dropped. Something wasn't right with her. Something she wasn't telling me. She avoided looking at him, avoided looking at me. Suddenly, the air between us turned cold and unfamiliar. In that moment, another truth cut through my fear. My neighbor might be dangerous, but the betrayal was already inside my home. The following morning, the chill in my bones had nothing to do with the weather. I couldn't stop thinking about Mara. The way she hesitated, the way her eyes shifted when the shadow outside appeared. I had trusted her completely, and now I felt betrayed. And yet, I couldn't ignore Mr. Grayson. He was still out there, still watching, still silent. I decided to confront him. Not with anger, not with panic, no. I would use calm. I would use clarity. I stepped out to the front porch, holding a cup of steaming tea for courage. Across the street, the familiar shadow was already there, frozen in place. Mr. Grayson? I called, voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. The figure shifted. He took a cautious step forward, then another, stopping just outside the property line. He was middle-aged, plain-looking, with a thin, nervous frame. His lips moved as if forming words, but I couldn't hear him over the pounding of my own heartbeat. I know what you've been doing, I continued. I've seen the pictures. I've felt your eyes on me. Why? He swallowed, finally finding his voice. I didn't mean any harm. His words faltered, but there was an edge, something in the way he avoided my gaze. Before I could reply, Mara's voice cut through my thoughts from behind me. Ella. You shouldn't do this, she said, rushing onto the porch. Her tone was sharp, urgent, almost panicked. I spun to face her. Mara, what are you doing? Why are you protecting him? I'm not protecting him, she snapped, though her hands shook. I'm just saying you can't trust your instincts all the time. You don't know his intentions. Don't escalate this, please. I looked back at Mr. Grayson. His eyes flicked nervously between Mara and me. Suddenly, everything clicked. This was why Mara hesitated yesterday. She had known him, had known what he was capable of. That's why she didn't warn me sooner. That's why her reaction fell off. You knew something, I said coldly, voice slicing the morning air. You've been protecting him. Mara froze, her face paling.
Ella, no.
I raised my hand. I'm done listening. I see it all now. The neighbor, sensing the tension, took a step back. The sudden movement made him look smaller, almost childlike. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Not really. You've been watching me for weeks, I said directly to him. And you thought you could manipulate me, scare me, make me doubt myself. But I've been planning too. He blinked, confused. Planning what? I've been gathering evidence, I said calmly. Photos, times, patterns. Everything you've done, everything you thought I didn't see, I've documented it. And soon, you'll realize that the one being manipulated is you. Mara's mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked guilty, almost panicked, but I ignored her. My focus was on him, on the truth. For the first time in weeks, I felt power. The fear that had kept me locked inside my own home had shifted into something sharper, more precise. I could see it in Mr. Grayson's eyes, the recognition that this woman, fragile though she may appear, was no longer a victim. He had underestimated me, and that, I realized, was the mistake that would cost him everything. That night, as I locked all doors and windows, I wasn't afraid. Not completely, but a new, thrilling thought ran through my mind. He would soon regret every moment he thought he had control. And I intended to make sure of it. The house was quiet, but it felt alive in a way it hadn't before. I sat in the living room, notebook open, cataloging every strange movement, every peek, every shadow that had crossed my blinds in the past 3 weeks. The patterns weren't random. They were deliberate, methodical, like a puzzle waiting for someone smart enough to solve it. And I intended to solve it. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I spread out my notes, photographs, and a small camera I'd hidden on the porch. I had finally caught him on tape, the same silhouette that had haunted me for weeks. But there was something else, a second set of eyes, faint, watching him. I froze. Mara. I hadn't realized until now that every time she came over, she had been monitoring him, too. I leaned back in my chair, the shock of betrayal mixing with a sudden thrill of discovery. She wasn't protecting him. She was hiding her own connection. The next morning, I decided to follow him. He left his house just before sunrise, moving quietly, almost nervously. I stayed in the shadows, clutching my coat around me, heart pounding, breath visible in the cold morning air. He walked down the street, paused at the corner, glanced over his shoulder, then entered a small, abandoned warehouse on the far edge of town. I had no idea what awaited me there, but I had to know. Inside, the air smelled of dust and rust. Broken furniture littered the floor, and sunlight streamed through cracks in the walls, illuminating motes that danced in the stillness. I crouched behind a stack of old crates, peeking through the shadows. He wasn't alone. A figure sat across from him, a man I had never seen before, older, with sharp features and a calculating gaze. They were speaking in low voices, and I could catch fragments of sentences. She's noticing everything. Too clever for her own good. Don't underestimate her. She's dangerous. My pulse raced. He wasn't just spying. This was something much bigger. Something planned, deliberate, and I was already a part of it, whether I liked it or not. I felt a chill run down my spine, but also curiosity. I had spent weeks imagining confrontation, revenge, fear. But now I realized that I didn't fully understand the game I had been drawn into. There were layers to this man's life, secrets that had nothing to do with my porch or my windows. And somewhere in those layers, the key to taking control must exist. When he stood and left the warehouse, I stayed hidden. I had to see where he went next. I followed him to a small, unmarked van parked near the river, the engine running. He loaded a box into the back, checked his surroundings, then drove off. I had no idea what was inside, but I knew it was important. Returning home, I realized the truth. Mr. Grayson was not the ordinary neighbor I had assumed. And Mara, she had her own reasons for silence, her own shadows. And now I understood one thing clearly. If I wanted to reclaim my peace, I would need to uncover both their secrets. The danger wasn't just outside my windows anymore. It had infiltrated the people around me. And I was ready. I leaned back in my chair, letting the adrenaline settle into a sharp focus. The story wasn't over. It was only just beginning. And tomorrow, I would step deeper into the mystery that had consumed my life for weeks. When daylight broke the next morning, Brook Hollow Lane looked as ordinary as ever. Children riding bicycles, a dog barking somewhere in the distance, sunlight brushing the rooftops with warmth. But inside me, something had shifted. The calmness outside felt fake now, like a painted backdrop hiding a darker truth. And I was finally ready to tear that backdrop down. I didn't bother pretending to be afraid anymore. Instead, I made myself breakfast, opened the blinds wide, and waited. The stage was set. If Mr. Grayson was watching, and he always was, then he'd see a woman who wasn't hiding anymore. At exactly 9 a.m., the curtains across the street twitched. Good. My plan began with Mara. She hadn't called, she hadn't visited, and that silence was louder than any explanation she could have given. I grabbed my notebook and keys and drove straight to her house across town. When she opened the door, she looked exhausted and scared. "Ella," she whispered, glancing at the street behind me, "you shouldn't be here." I pushed past her. "You're going to tell me everything. Right now." She closed the door slowly, shoulders sinking. "I was trying to protect you. By defending him?" I snapped. "By pretending I'm imagining things?" "No," she said, voice trembling. "By trying to keep you out of something you can't handle." A cold silence settled between us. "What is he?" I asked. "What's his connection to you?" She hesitated too long. Her hands shook as she ran her fingers through her hair. I didn't want to be involved again. I moved here to escape it. But when I saw him watching you, she swallowed. I knew it had started again. Started what again? I demanded. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a worn envelope. Inside were pictures. Not of me, of her. Different house, different street, different year. All taken from windows and door cracks. My chest tightened. "He used to watch me," she said. 2 years ago. Before you even moved here." My breath caught. What? It began the same way, harmless at first. A curtain moving, a shadow. Then the pictures started. Polaroids. Notes. He followed me to work, to stores. Everywhere. Her voice cracked. I couldn't prove anything. And when I tried confronting him, he said the exact same thing he said to you. I didn't mean any harm. A chill crawled down my spine. Then, she continued, I discovered something worse. He wasn't acting alone. My stomach twisted. The warehouse. The older man. The conversations. "Mara, who is he working with?" She pressed a shaking hand to her lips. "His brother." "Brother?" I whispered. "Yes. The older man you saw with him. I know you followed him. I can see it in your eyes. They're a team, Ella. They do this together. They pick someone quiet, someone isolated, someone who won't fight back. One spies, the other decides what to do next. My skin prickled. My heart pounded. Everything I thought I knew shattered. But why me? I choked out. Mara lowered her eyes. That's the twist you're not going to like, she whispered. They didn't pick you. I froze. You were never the target, she said. I was. The room spun. What? They watched you because you moved into the house across from him. You're losing sleep, losing peace, losing yourself because of me. Tears welled in her eyes. I'm the one they want. And you're just in the crossfire. The world seemed to tilt sideways. All my fear, anger, determination suddenly felt like pieces of a game I didn't know I was playing. A game I wasn't even meant to be in. And Ella, she took a shaky breath. Now that you've interfered, they won't just watch anymore. A cold whisper slid down my spine. The real danger hadn't started yet. It was coming. For both of us. By the time evening fell, Brook Hollow Lane was cloaked in a dusky orange glow. Shadows stretched across the pavement, and the usual neighborhood sounds felt muted, almost hesitant. I could feel it, the tension crawling up my spine, tight and suffocating, like a rope slowly wrapping around my chest. Mara and I sat in my living room, reviewing the photos, notes, and recordings we had collected over the past weeks. Every detail mattered now. Every shadow, every sound, every misstep. I can't believe they've done this to people before, Mara whispered, her voice trembling. They're meticulous, calculating. You think you've caught a glimpse, and then you're already caught in the web. I nodded, swallowing my fear. We've seen enough.
We know their patterns.
We know how they operate. And now we can turn it against them. Her eyes widened. You mean, what exactly? We create a situation they don't control, I said, feeling a fire ignite inside me. We set the trap. They think they're manipulating us, but in reality, they're walking right into our hands. Mara looked doubtful. Are you sure this is safe? We could make it worse. They're not just ordinary people. They've studied their victims before acting. They know how to anticipate every move. Then we outsmart them, I said. We plan 2 steps ahead, 3 if necessary.
No improvisación.
Nothing reckless. We spent hours strategizing. Every window, every streetlight, every possible escape route was accounted for. We rehearsed conversations, timing, and positioning. It was exhausting, mentally and emotionally, but the clarity that came with having a plan was exhilarating. For the first time, I felt in control. Not fear, not anxiety, control. And then it happened. A knock at the door. Slow, deliberate, calm, but with a weight that made the hair on my arms stand up. I peeked through the peephole. Mr. Grayson. Alone this time. He was smiling, or at least it looked like a smile, but his eyes were sharp, cold, predatory. Mara stiffened beside me. He's here, she whispered. I drew in a steadying breath. Let's see how confident he really is. I opened the door. Evening, I said casually, as if nothing unusual had happened. He tilted his head, scanning the room. Evening, he said smoothly. I wanted to talk. Face to face. No games. Good, I replied, stepping aside to let him in. The air between us was electric, charged with months of fear, observation, and now anticipation. Every step he took felt calculated, measured. Every glance, every pause, felt like a test. Mara and I exchanged a look. This was it. This was the moment when control could shift. You've been watching me, I said, voice low, steady, but carrying the weight of every sleepless night, every anxious morning. But you didn't expect me to watch back, did you? He didn't respond immediately. He merely studied me, a predator realizing its prey might have claws. And in that pause, the tension peaked. The moment stretched, suspended like a held breath. I could see it in his eyes, uncertainty. The realization that things were no longer in his hands. And I knew, without a doubt, that the next few minutes would determine everything, who was truly in control and who would end up paying the price for underestimating a woman pushed to her limits. Mr. Grayson stood in my living room like he owned the air around him, calm, collected, eerily confident. But behind that stillness, something twitched. His fingers,
His jaw.
his eyes. A predator masking the moment he realized the prey had teeth. He glanced at Mara first. "You're here," he said quietly. Not surprised. More like annoyed. Mara took a shaky step back. "Stay away from us." He ignored her and turned to me. "You've been very busy, Ella." The way he spoke my name, steady, deliberate, sent a tremor down my spine. I steadied myself. "I know what you've been doing," I replied. "Watching me, following Mara, breaking into her old house, leaving pictures, playing games you thought no one would understand." He didn't blink. "You think this is a game? You made it one," I shot back. A slow, unsettling smile crept across his face.
No.
"You did." Before I could make sense of that, the front door clicked shut. Mara gasped. She hadn't touched it. Mr. Grayson hadn't either. Someone else had entered. Footsteps echoed through the hallway. And then a shadow filled the doorway. Taller, older,
Sharper.
his brother. The same man from the warehouse. The same cold, calculating eyes. Mara froze completely, her worst nightmare standing inside the very house she thought was safe. "Ella," the older man said calmly, "you've involved yourself in something you don't understand." "Oh, I understand enough," I replied, though my throat tightened. "You stalk women. You study them. You try to break them." He chuckled, a low, humorless sound that made my skin crawl. "Break them?
No.
We observe. We test. We learn." "Why, Mara?" I demanded. "Why me?" The older brother tilted his head, eyes glinting with a twisted kind of satisfaction. "Because humans reveal their truest selves under pressure. Fear exposes honesty. Isolation exposes weakness. And watching exposes everything else." My stomach dropped. This wasn't random. This wasn't obsession. This was deliberate psychological testing, and we were their subjects. Mara shook violently. "You ruined my life. You followed me across cities. You destroyed my peace." "You left," the older brother replied casually. "Unfinished study." I stepped in front of her. "She's not your project. Neither am I." Mr. Grayson took one step forward, lowering his voice. "You should have stayed quiet. It was never about hurting you. But now you've complicated things." The room felt smaller, colder. Two predators. Two women. And not enough space to run. But then something happened, something none of us expected. A flash. Bright, sharp, blinding. Mara had grabbed my porch camera, the one I used for evidence, and held it like a weapon.
Flash.
Again. Mr. Grayson stumbled, disoriented. The older brother hissed. "Stop that." "No," Mara said, voice breaking but firm. "You stop."
Flash.
Another shot. This one aimed at his face. He shielded his eyes, cursing under his breath. "Put the camera down." I stepped toward them, pulse pounding. "You've spent months hiding behind shadows. Let's see how you handle being seen." Mara snapped another photo, closer, brighter, practically burning their silhouettes into the room. And then she whispered the words that turned the entire situation upside down. "I've been recording everything." The brothers froze. For the first time, they looked afraid. "What did you say?" the older one whispered, voice cracking. Mara's hand shook, but she held the small microphone recorder tight. "Every conversation, every threat, every moment you followed us. It's all saved, uploaded, backed up." A shockwave rippled through the room. We weren't prey anymore. We weren't victims. We were witnesses. armed with truth, evidence, leverage. And they knew it. Everything changed in an instant, and the balance of power split clean down the middle. The air in the living room felt electric, like it had been holding its breath for months. The brothers, Grayson and his older sibling, stood frozen, caught off guard by the sudden power shift. Mara's camera had become more than a tool. It was a weapon. And for the first time, we weren't hiding. We weren't afraid. I took a deep breath. "You've spent months thinking you were untouchable," I said, voice steady, cutting through the thick tension. "But now you're the ones exposed." The older brother's jaw tightened. He tried to speak, but his words stumbled. Grayson's eyes flicked between Mara and me, sharp and calculating, but now tinged with uncertainty. "I know everything," I continued, feeling a thrill run through me. "Every photo you've taken, every step you thought was private, every message, every threat. We have it all. Uploaded. Safe. Ready for anyone who needs to see it." Grayson's hand twitched toward his pocket, likely for a phone, a weapon, or some other trick. I didn't flinch. "You'll have to do better than intimidation," I said, stepping closer, making them realize their movements were now predictable. "Because from now on, you're playing by our rules." Mara's voice rang out, unwavering. "Every time you tried to manipulate someone, you left a trail. You're not clever. You're sloppy. And we collected everything." The older man's composure cracked. "You don't know what you're doing," he muttered. I smiled. "Oh, we know exactly what we're doing. And you just gave us all the leverage we need." The room's tension snapped like a live wire. Grayson's face paled, realization dawning. This was the moment they'd underestimated completely. Two women, backed by evidence and courage, had turned their own methods against them. "You're finished," I said quietly, letting the weight of those words hang in the air. "Everything you've built, every shadow you've used to intimidate people, it's over." The older brother's hand shook slightly. He looked at Grayson, whose confidence was now replaced with panic. Neither of them made another move. Mara snapped a final photograph, the flash illuminating their stunned faces. I felt a surge of relief and power. The threat that had loomed for months was dissolving before us. I picked up my phone and called the local authorities calmly and with precision. "We have two suspects. They've been stalking and harassing us. We have photographic evidence and recorded conversations. They are right here." By the time the police arrived, the brothers were silent, frozen, and cornered by their own fear. Every lie, every manipulation, every sinister plan had collapsed. Their intimidation was powerless in the light of truth. I watched them being led out in handcuffs, their faces a mix of disbelief and humiliation. Grayson's older brother glared at me, but there was no fire left in his eyes, only defeat. I turned to Mara, who exhaled shakily, tears in her eyes. "We did it," she whispered. "Yes," I said, feeling the adrenaline fade into a deep, satisfying calm. "We took back control. And now, nothing like this will ever happen again." The neighborhood outside seemed quieter somehow. Normal. The danger that had crept into our lives for months had been destroyed. I sat back in my chair and allowed myself to relax for the first time. The fear, the anxiety, the sleepless nights, they were gone. What remained was clarity,
Strength.
and the knowledge that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't aggression or anger. It's preparation, courage, and knowing your own worth. For months, we had been prey. Tonight, we became untouchable. The police car lights faded down Maple Street, leaving Mara and me standing in the soft glow of our porch light. The night smelled of wet pavement and pine, calm after the storm. I finally allowed myself to breathe deeply, feeling a weight lift from my chest that I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. Mara looked at me, awe and disbelief dancing in her eyes. I can't believe it's over, she said softly. I smiled, feeling a strange mix of triumph and relief. It's never just about proving them wrong. It's about taking your life back, about showing yourself what you're capable of. For months, I had been careful, quiet, fearful. Every shadow in my home had felt like a threat, every rustle outside like the footsteps of predators. But tonight, the predators were gone. Their power shattered, dismantled by evidence, courage, and our own determination. I looked around my home, the small living room, the garden outside, the windows that had once felt like prison bars. Everything looked different now. Safer.
Ours.
I realized then that freedom didn't come from running, hiding, or fearing the shadows. It came from facing them. Mara's camera flashed one last time as she documented the aftermath. I knew these photos and recordings would never be used for revenge. They were proof that we had survived, that we had fought, that we had won. And more importantly, proof that we were never powerless. I turned toward Mara. You know what this really means?
I asked.
Her brow furrowed.
What?
That life can't be stolen from you, I said. Not by fear. Not by people who think they have control. Not even by those who seem untouchable. You take it back and it's yours. We both laughed softly, the kind of laughter that comes after holding your breath for far too long. The street outside seemed quiet now, peaceful, a stark contrast to the tension that had gripped it just hours ago. But even as I savored the calm, a thought settled in my mind, steady and reassuring. This is just the beginning. The world will always test you, push you, threaten to take what you value most. But now I knew what it felt like to stand your ground, to fight with strategy, courage, and intelligence. And when you do, the results are unstoppable. I looked at the camera on the table, a reminder of everything we had endured and conquered. And then I realized something crucial. The story wasn't just ours. It was for anyone who had ever felt trapped, watched, underestimated, or silenced. For anyone who had ever been told to stay quiet or not make a fuss. Because sometimes the most satisfying victories aren't the loud ones. They are the quiet ones, the ones where you take control, where you rise above fear, and where you let your actions speak louder than any threat ever could. I turned to Mara one last time. Are you ready to share the story? She nodded. They need to see it. And as I sat at my desk, typing up our journey, I realized it was more than just a story. It was a message, a call to everyone out there who felt powerless. You are stronger than you think. You can take back your life. And sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply standing tall while they crumble under their own schemes. I smiled, leaning back, feeling the thrill of victory, the warmth of freedom. And for the first time in months, I felt truly unstoppable. So, to anyone watching, remember this. Stand firm, plan carefully, fight wisely, and let the world see what happens when you refuse to be a victim. If you've ever felt underestimated, trapped, or silenced, hit subscribe. Watch the next story.